AI and people. Everybody's talking about it right now. Everybody comes into this conversation from different angles, and we're going to dig in. Either your board or your CEO or your manager in some capacity has asked you to start looking into AI as a topic, whether rolling out a strategy, what does that even mean, or starting to look into some automation tools. So when we're looking at AI, automation, so a lot of these buzzwords, what is the difference? How do we approach this topic?
How I approach this is like from the problem first mindset. So essentially, and I like to quote this. So there is a quote from Albert Einstein, and it is, if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'll focus 55 minutes on understanding the problem and then 5 minutes on solving the problem. So essentially, he would focus 55 minutes on understanding the problem deeply, which is where I think a lot of organizations are missing out the opportunity on, where there is a problem that comes up and then people just go off for the shiny objects trying to solve for the problem, which is a business user would come and say, solve my problem with AI. But a lot of times AI is not the answer. So the way this could be approached is looking at the problem first, understanding it more deeply. Because as you look further into, what the pain point is, what the user experience is, what you actually end up realizing is a lot of times it's a training issue. So, a lot of times it's like people training issue. Oh, okay, it worked this way. I thought, AI would solve for this, but it's actually a training issue. So that's number one. Number two, where, the automation and the AI piece, it could be an automation related issue, which is essentially a process is repetitive. A process is something where there is no human in the loop needed, and a process is something which is needed for a very regular basis or day-to-day activities. So that's where automation comes in. So which could be solved just by simply applying tools like Power Automate, like RPA, and then you just understand the workflow, you put automate the process, and it's solved. So again, AI doesn't come into the picture. Now the third type of problem where actually AI comes into the picture is that, I have this data, I have historical data, I have, data from different systems, and all my processes are manual, and now I want somebody to solve for them. So that's where AI can actually come in. It can use all the, data from the past, try to, sort of give you an idea of what story the data is telling, but then also take you into the future, which is predictive future, which is recommendation. So it can use the data, make recommendations for you, and show you the vision of the future. But then again, that kind of problem is not every problem. But then people think all the problems will be solved by AI. So I think that's how I would say, whenever you are hearing from anybody that comes with you to say, okay, solve this with AI, maybe ask them, can we understand your problem statement a little bit better, understand the processes it's impacting, and then also what's the value? So say I spent, my time and my team is gonna work on this. What do you think is the value to the business? Which I know you mentioned, what is the operational efficiency, or, what is the ROI? So asking those questions, and if that is evaluated properly, and then the right technology is identified and implemented, I think it's gonna be a better, it's gonna solve for the right issue.
Yeah, really interesting perspective. I think that is a topic that's actually come up. We do a lot of consultancy work in this space, and companies are being told to look at an AI strategy. A CHRO or a CPO is being told to look at an AI strategy, but it is this reverse engineering of what are the actual business issues in this context in your recruiting or TA space that you're looking to solve, and then figuring it out from there. What are the solutions out there that even exist for you today? Is it an automation tool? Is it a wider AI strategy? Very interesting. Jill, we understand, obviously, given the conversation we've had already, but also just everything going on in the wider space today, the conversation around AI, the buzz around AI, there's going to be dramatic changes to the workforce, to the way that all of our jobs happen, to the way that hiring happens, everything. The repetitive and mundane, in theory, will get automated at some point. right? What will that mean in the spirit of our workshop earlier when we're thinking about 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, if the sort of entry level, mundane, more repetitive tasks, which is the training ground, right, for all of us and for the field in general, gets automated? What does that mean for career ladders, for progression, for middle management, if that training ground is sort of removed and ends up automated?
So if we take those tactical pieces off the table, what we have left is more meaningful work. That's going to require more critical thinking and more soft skills. And currently today, I don't think we're equipped to train people on that day one. If you think about it, folks develop that over time, and then they step into leadership roles, more senior roles. So we have to think about how we can start preparing for that now, because critical thinking is a lot harder to teach than teaching someone how to execute a process or an experiment. And so that's going to have ripple effects back into, I envision, the education system. It needs to start sooner. We need to reach down to Gen Alpha and start to prepare them for how to think through different problems and tasks. And on the other hand, on the soft skills, I'm noticing in the younger generations, with how tech-driven they are, sometimes they see more challenges building relationships and social connection. So we're going to have to start helping them overcome that barrier sooner. And that's a whole nother landscape that I don't think we're prepared for, as well as our leadership team. Even our entry-level managers or our mid-level managers, are they equipped to be able to navigate these situations with their team? So it's going to change the entire training ground, the onboarding system, potentially the education system.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'll start by saying I was an early adopter of AI in general, for basically everything, whether it was, responding to my teenage daughter to not incite a rebellion, to keep things very even-keeled, or, for work, for just generating boilerplate, template letters, what have you. It's a game changer. Super efficient, saves a lot of time. We will have to start training some of the softer skills. I think the pendulum will swing the other way, right? Everything's tech. I know for my kids, it's all about the technology, but I think we're losing some ground on the softer skills. So that's a really good point. And so I think AI will be able to replace a lot of the things that can be automated. What I don't think AI will be able to replace ever is the complexities of humanity, the complexities of the nuances of the human nature, whether that's in the workplace or outside of the workplace. Apparently you can get like an AI best friend now. I think it's a little weird, a little bit of a stretch, but there's, they're looking at AI for literally everything. So we need to be prepared to embrace it for sure, but I don't think it will be able to replace everything.
Yeah, the only thing I'd sort of add to that is I 100% agree with what was shared. I work in talent acquisition. I've looked at it through the lens of, so we're talking about automation, repetitive tasks, but also getting towards a point where things are now more AI driven. Going out on a limb, I really believe, a theory I have is that it could essentially, not that I want to talk myself out of a job or make myself redundant, but it could essentially replace your average recruiter. Yes, there will always be human intuition needed. When you get to the complexities of an offer, for example, can AI subtly understand that, suitably deliver an offer which is going to, compel and be competitive, etc.? Maybe, maybe not. But if you think about all the touch points prior to that, if you think about, a hiring manager needing a job, generate a job description, post the job, review candidates, rank the candidates, interview the candidates, then kind of assess those candidates. If you think about there's companies out there, Goldman Sachs, I know, do it with all their interns, for example. The first interview stage is automated with AI, essentially, and then that is then a report of body language, interaction, knowledge of the company, knowledge of the job. That coupled with this individual's resume, then you've got a pretty compelling report there. And that means that you could, whereas at the moment I can only interview the top 4 or 5 applicants, I can interview 1,000 applicants. You could, think about co-op recruitment, intern recruitment, manufacturing associates, for example. It's infinite. You suddenly move away from having to narrow that cone to really make sure you're attracting the best talent. So I don't know. I hope you're all not out of a job in 10 years because of me, but I do think change is coming.
Follow-up question. This could be for you, Nishta, or to anybody actually on this panel. We talk a lot about unconscious bias in the actual interview process when it's human-led, but then very good point that there are these biases in AI as well. What is the balance between that? Which is worse?
Again, I know that at least in the past 5 years or so, there have been every company, at least the big Fortune 500, have had these policies in place where if you are interviewing for a role, you have to screen candidates as per the DE&I sort of standards. So meaning if you only interviewed 5 males for a position, you cannot make a decision until you have actually given a chance to all the other candidates who have applied, whether it's female candidates or a different age group. So again, I think we have tried to regulate that portion on say human level, but then in the AI space, it's a little difficult. So what I would say is human in a loop is the way to go. Meaning, there could be that AI, but then there should be a human sort of like a HR person actually, even if, you use that tool, like actually looking at those applications and saying, okay, I think something is wrong because we just got 10 male candidates and only from this XYZ university or this level of, whatever experience, and actually something is wrong. So again, there needs to be still a human in loop. So that's what I'm seeing that is still the reality.
Correct. So to build off that, I think if we're pulling AI heavily into these processes, we have to have a really good audit capability on the back end to be able to monitor what is actually happening, what are we seeing, and are there things that we need to course correct quickly. So without that, I don't think we'll be able to get to Theo's world.
I think we're making more data-driven decisions. If the algorithm is, to Nishta's point, is you're avoiding the maximum of garbage in, garbage out, and you're happy and satisfied with where it's pointed at and the quality is looking good. If you can then, as your HR TA person, if you can understand the results, what your attraction is, what you're generating, it frees you up to have more, and this is the ideal, it frees you up to have more data-driven strategic conversations. Who are we attracting? What's the business need? Where's the difficulty? Where's the bottleneck? What do we need to get there? Because when we talked about career ladders earlier, that's another point. It's not just externally facing, it's internally facing too. If it is that, we can get to a point where AI is mapping out career development for your average individual, that means that there'll be capacity for HR, TA to suddenly start working with leaders on, does that exist internally? Where does it exist? How does it exist? When can we move that? Instead of having to go through the motions of painful external recruitment processes or people promoting people before they're ready, victims of the Peter Principle, etc. You can understand all of that if it is that you've got the algorithm correct, the machine learning correct, and you understand where you are in the talent landscape.
There's just naturally a subjective nature to employee relations, human resources, people and culture, what have you, right? We try to be as objective as possible. So I think AI in terms of automation, just like applicant tracking, right? Anything that's going to make life a little bit easier with the sort of more rote activities, I'm all for it. But I feel like if we try to push it too far down the path, we will end up with a very sterile, robotic, computer-driven organization, regardless of where you are, and you lose that sort of the context and the texture of an organization if you end up with all the same phenotype too, right? Obviously, you can program AI to have DEI and B and diversity and those things, but then are we over-engineering that as well? So I feel like there has to be a balance for sure. Definitely needs to be calibration, and someone has to have eyes on it, particularly with those studies, which are a little bit concerning. And I use it, I think of it more as just like a part of a computer, right? Like that's going to help us and make life easier. Back in the day when we had like Photoshop and MS-DOT and things like that was making school projects easier. I am aging myself, but I see it more as like that sort of tool in terms of like quick, efficient.
And I think at the end of the day, HR is a customer service function. And so when I think about customer service interactions I have in my personal life, if I have a problem that I can't easily solve with a few clicks, I want to talk to a person. And if I can talk to a person directly, my satisfaction on that experience is going to be a lot higher.
So we've covered TA, right? We'd actually love to leave this off, which we'll get back to at the end with some concrete examples of some cool tools actually that are very accessible to implement, and that I know a lot of you are using in your businesses today to sort of speed along or make more productive the very early end of the talent acquisition cycle. We've talked a little bit about the HR side and automating some of those tasks. What about talent management, talent development, sort of the middle stage of that life cycle and how it can make us better in those ways?
Essentially, Takeda launched a tool called Career Navigator. So what it does is, it's like, how when you buy clothes online at an e-commerce platform, you put your preferences in that, I'm this size, I want like this color, or I want to see these kind of things. So it's similar to that, but then it's about you. So you put, what your background is, what experience you have. So it's not based on the resume. I mean, you can upload the resume as a supplement if you are actively looking for opportunities. But then you can just put your preferences of this is my background, and this is where I would like to grow. And then am I open to global roles, or, I want to, stay within this geography. And then what it does is it gives you recommendations. And then you can also set up your notification. I want to get notified weekly. I want to get notified daily. And then, essentially what you did is you created your profile. So now what the tool does is it's using AI in the background, and it has data based on all the positions. So all the job positions are, sort of fed in the data. There are mentoring opportunities. So in the organization, if there were like 100 of people who said, I want to be mentored, then, their information will be there. Then there will be, it's also connected to our learning platform, where there are also, say, like videos to watch, or, trainings to take. So once I've completed my profile and I've said, this is what I want, and totally up to, how I would like that content to be sent to me, it's going to send me an email whenever there is an opportunity that is matching that profile that I created. So even though I'm not interested at the moment that I want to change my job, but then I'm still like, oh, wow, this role actually, wow, this looks like my dream role. Maybe I should just set up a call with this person or the HR and, inquire about it. It also sent me recommendations on these are the people who you may want to get mentorship from. So it gave me their contact information, and it's completely up to me if I want to do that or, not do that. So like my development is in my hands. And then thirdly, what it gave me, which was very interesting, is recommendation on trainings. And, there are like, and even for training, I said, I want 2 hours or 5 hours, or I want actual live workshops. So it gave me all the trainings that were available at the organizational level. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. So I still get like a monthly update, because I'm like, you need time to go through all of those things, but it's more like your personalized, development tool. And then what I'm noticing is that every quarter, I get a notification to upload my latest resume onto that, so that way it is updated. So it's not like running out of date, and it's like, is your position still this, do you want to add something? So it every quarter checks on me to say, would you like to update your profile? So I think it's very interesting. It's like more like that predictive recommendation-based model, which we see in e-commerce industry, or Amazon, when we buy something and it tells us, you may like that. So I was like, it's very interesting. You can see that for job. And again, sometimes I've noticed that it would not match you to, say, the right TA or the right, area that you are looking for. And that's where I think that learning opportunity for AI training is. So that's one example of a tool for development. Now, the other tool that I saw, and this was, it's more a coaching tool. So there is actually an AI coach, and, it talks to you, and it's essentially a speech coach. So it's helping you prepare for like company talks. So our company did TED Talk last year, and this tool was more to coach people to say, you can prepare, and it's like literally a person, and you talk to them. And then you speak something, and it records it, and it tells you, oh, you have these many fillers, you can improve into that. But then what I was told is that it's very native, like very, you have to like train it more. They said, they are just piloting it out. They don't think it's like at that high coaching level, but then it can still act as your speech coach. So I leveraged it like 1 or 2 times, and actually it was pretty cool. But honestly, I felt a little freaky. It was a little freaky because it was a cartoon trying to talk to you. So I stayed away from it, but because I prefer an actual coach. But yeah, it's so those 2 tools I thought were very, very creative.
With that platform, Do you see a spike in folks wanting to transfer out of their current role, creating workforce gaps rather than being more willing to grow in their current space?
So it's mixed. So again, when I got, sent information through that, I actually had a chat with my boss and I just said, hey, you know what, I got this job opportunity recommended. What do you think? So like I had that chat with her to say, okay, do you think, should I explore this? And she was like, yeah, I mean, if this is something you would want to do next, I would highly encourage you to explore. But then it could depend on where you are in your career cycle. So for example, if you just started a role and it's sending you that role, then maybe something to sit on it and at least, but it gives you an idea that in a big organization like Takeda, which is 50,000 employees, and I don't know how many business units, I can't even count, at least I know, okay, there is this business unit which may have something that I may aspire for. So it's still like good for a mentoring or networking opportunity. So even if you don't want to act on it, don't act, but it's something that you should at least be aware of. So I would say it's more awareness. And again, it's totally up to the person on where they are in their journey and if they want to act.
It seems a little bit more feasible for a larger company and requiring some education for managers that comes along with it.
What I was also going to ask, and maybe this is a Siobhan topic, or Jill, you, how does that affect, I suppose it's just a curiosity of my own, how will that affect managers coaching and managers kind of taking it on themselves, which is a huge piece of management, to look out for those opportunities for their team? Is there a risk there, or is it more just, again, like with anything, about the balance and us getting that balance right, of managers still looking out for and developing their teams and talking to them about development opportunities, the real like emotional intelligence and emotional connection and human touch of HR, of employee development, of employee relations, like you've talked a lot about. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but that's just something that it was a curiosity of my own in thinking about that. I can absolutely see the benefits of it, but the pitfalls could be that.
Yeah, and I think that coaching is, you meet the coachee where they are, right? You have to get to know each coachee, and everyone's going to be different. And I see coaching as sort of photosynthesis, right? You're pulling out of the coachee what should already be inside of them, depending on what you're coaching on. And I just don't see AI able to do that in a way that's has any EQ, right, whatsoever, if any empathy. Perhaps it could ask a bunch of questions to get to know the coachee a little bit better and maybe tee up some good questions for the human coach. But those are some of the, more complex, like soft skill, human touch things that I feel like AI would not be able to replace.
I would say at the end of the day, the manager is still the advocate for that employee. It's their job to get them exposure, to get them recognition. And so they have to know what folks want to do, what they're interested in. And in my mind, AI can't replace that.
AI could certainly, like I said, tee up some good questions or framework, right? That would be where I would start is, draft a quick framework for a coaching session, and then retool it from there. That's the type of thing I would absolutely use it for at the outset, but I don't think I would replace an actual manager with that tool.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I've also noticed one of my coaches, executive coaches, actually used AI to record the session. So then it sent me, these are my action items, or these are the things on reflect, you can reflect on. So I thought it was very effective because for a coach, because even they want to be effective and, talk to as many people as possible. So it was helping them, do their, or be better or efficient. And same can apply to a manager who may have a lot of direct reports that they want to manage. So when they are having the talent discussions, they can certainly record, have the AI sort of recorder on, and then that could capture everything. And then that could go in their plan.
I want to make sure, in, again, the same sort of lens that we talked about earlier with the workshop and being able to take some of these tangible takeaways back into each of your businesses. I think Jill brought up a really good point, right? What Takeda is doing, what Moderna is doing, which, Theo, we haven't talked about yet, but would love to at least quickly touch upon the collaboration with OpenAI, and Moderna is doing some pretty groundbreaking work in popular, unpopular, controversial, but in using AI really in every element of their TA. But for the people from companies who do not have the Takeda, the Moderna, huge budgets, deep pockets, go ahead and research these tools, implement absolutely anything you want, try it out. What can we recommend there? What are some actual tangible takeaways in the crowd where people may leave today and say, oh, we actually do have that issue where all of my recruiters are spending 50% of their week screening out thousands of CVs that actually I'd love a tool if there were one that, with the right safeguards and balances around, is not wildly, prohibitively expensive and will be interesting and actually drive value for my business. So I'd love, Theo, to hear quickly about just the work Moderna is doing with AI, and then really from the rest of you, just a couple key takeaways, any tools that you love, things that you've seen implemented that people can maybe come up and follow up with you on after or look into themselves after today.
For sure. And I was going to preface this answer by saying, I appreciate that not every company is in the privileged position that Moderna is, where we can, have such resource for things like partnerships with OpenAI. It's something that comes from the top. Our CEO is an ardent believer that, you should 10x our workforce by using AI, and in this case, ChatGPT. So we announced a partnership several months ago. Every permanent employee gets a license to ChatGPT. We receive the latest software that they release. So, it means that we've got an advantage in that respect, but I do know that's not the same for every organization. So we're just being encouraged and driven to think AI, first be AI-centric, native, if you will. So we've got access to lots of resources, learnings, tools on how we can get there. And it's an iterative process, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not like tomorrow we're going to go in and suddenly everyone's doing this as a first port call. It's a cultural thing, it has to kind of spark that curiosity. And it's different to everyone, of course it is. There's some functions where they're going to really benefit from it. There's others, it's going to take a bit longer. We had an example internally where there's, and I'm going to get the technical language not spot on, but it's to do with dosing. And essentially there was a problem, going back to Nishta's point about what's the problem. The problem was it took up to 2 months to really do the dosing for clinical trials. And then some very smart people in the organization realized that with the right prompting and the right data, it reduced down to like 3 minutes. So like something insane. It was just could save time, save money. That's a very good example. And that's been, had videos and use cases made on that because it is a very good example. So and it goes hand in hand with a lot of tools that we use in talent acquisition. Eightfold is what we use for, which is a very popular one. It's becoming more popular because that's got an AI-driven platform. What I would say is that, if you haven't got access to that and those resources and those tools, it's around, being curious about it, like trying to what worked for me was breaking down the granularity of my day-to-day, the emails I'm sending. If someone receives an email from me that's over 10 words long, there's a high likelihood I didn't write that email. I've got GPTs which kind of write that email. Nathan, my colleague over here, raise your hand, Nathan. I'm going to put you on the spot. Nathan's the real brains behind the operation. He's my colleague in talent acquisition. He's just really at the forefront of this stuff. He sees everything in color, whereas I still see a lot of it in black and white when it comes to AI and ChatGPT. So, huge kudos to him. But even this week, I had my little mind blown by something called Notebook LM from Google. It's free. It's available for you all to go and explore today. And essentially, it creates podcast type material. I'm reluctant to use the word podcast because someone challenged me on LinkedIn and said, so you're just stealing people's material, passing off as your own. I don't intend to stop publishing podcasts on Spotify, but essentially it's used for synthesizing SOPs, documents, cultural overviews, and it then creates something that's 100% AI driven in a matter of minutes. It's two people talking, it's conversant, it's like a podcast, and it just explains things and it synthesizes information in a different way. So that's something that I would just encourage you all, like I say, be curious about these things.
Yeah, and just to add to Theo's point of the approach for smaller companies, which do not have, say, a lot of funding, and they still want to do the best. So the approach that I would take is like the 70-20-10 approach, which is 70%, invest in day-to-day innovation where you are gonna get your ROI, which is okay, absolutely, I'm going to invest in this and I'm going to get money back. So 70%, you are getting the ROI back. Now, that 30%, you can actually experiment that in 70-20-10. So in 20, you can try to experiment with new technologies and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to try Gen AI, which is at the moment has proven some of the ROI. But, again, in that 20, I have opportunity to fail, but then try to disrupt and bring something new. Now, 10% is where you can actually think of, I'm only going to have one project and I'm going to put the best people, but it's something in 5 years from now, which is maybe like hologram technology where, you have candidates interviewing say they're not physically present and it's their hologram sitting and chatting with you. So again, I think that 70-20-10 approach can help the smaller companies to ensure that they're still maximizing on the ROI, but then they have that little bit room to experiment. And then, not investing all, again, focusing on the problem and then trying to say, let's experiment, which is doing an MVP, taking an MVP approach for that 2010 and trying to maybe build something small, like a use case, and trying to see the value out of it and then scaling it up. But again, I've applied that multiple times and I thought it worked because you are answerable to leadership to say, okay, I still got you your ROI, and then I had the opportunity to experiment.
And I would say, similar to Theo, if you're looking to get started, start small. Just figure out how it fits in your day-to-day life and where you can leverage it. I use it a lot for creative aspects. It's not my strong suit. So job descriptions, training decks. It's great at putting together a lot. Like Theo, emails, it's great, making sure that feedback is in a very nice, well-written format. So there's so many small ways you can use it. And I would just say start using it as much as you can all day long.
Okay.
When you say it, are you talking about ChatGPT or is there a specific tool you use at Verve?
So ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, anything like that, that's, you don't need the big fancy platforms necessarily.
What was fascinating for me in digging into this topic is that there actually are quite a few tools that are a lot more accessible and affordable or free for let alone the individual, but certainly even TA and HR orgs to start using to kind of get comfortable. It can be a bit of a slow build rather than all of a sudden implement an AI strategy tomorrow. So hopefully this has made some of these things feel a little bit more accessible and hear some real life ways that AI and automation are being used. Thank you, first of all, to our incredible panelists. As I said, many of them, most of them, all of them have spoken at other events and sat on other panels before. So again, you all took a leap of faith too, being on this one, and House of Visionaries, what is this thing? So here it is, this is House of Visionaries. Thank you all so much for coming. Watch this space for all the follow-up stuff that Sean just mentioned, and we will hopefully see you at our next event.